Little delay. Andy, I'll let you know when to start. We can begin.
Good afternoon, educators, lawyers, teachers, parents across the state. My name is Andrew Jones. I'm a lawyer with the Dallas Bar Association. I'd like to introduce Eric Walker for today's program.
Thank you, Andy. On behalf of the Dallas Bar Association Public Forum Committee, welcome to our forum titled Challenges Facing Our Schools, a discussion with former DFW superintendents. With us today, we have our moderator, Gromer Jeffers, who is a longstanding political columnist with the Dallas Morning News and host of Inside Texas Politics on Sunday mornings on NBC5. We also have our distinguished panel of guests, including Dr. Michael Hinojosa, a longtime and former superintendent of Dallas ISD, also longtime former superintendent Kent Scribner from Fort Worth ISD, and Dr. Jeannie Stone, former superintendent of Richardson ISD. Our panel is going to be discussing a wide range of topics that have been and will be facing our public schools for the foreseeable future and will shape the education our kids will receive. We hope that this forum will give you a great insight into how large school districts operate and ways you can get involved in a constructive way to help ensure our kids have the best educational outcomes possible. With that, I'm turning it over to our moderator, Gromer Jeffers.
Thank you, Eric, and it's an honor to be here, not just with my friends at the association and you guests, but these great superintendents, former superintendents, and there's a smile on their faces when I say former superintendents. They've done their time and now they're here to share more of their wisdom with you. And so I'm excited about this program. We're going to go about an hour, and it's going to be free flowing, so you can hear the wisdom of these guests. And so let's begin now. And I'm going to give you guys 5 words that may have caused you concern on the job in the past. The legislature is in session. And let's begin with you, Dr. Stone. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick and Governor Abbott have both said that school choice, which is essentially a voucher program, is one of their main priorities for the upcoming legislative session. The House Speaker Dan Phelan, has been more measured, probably because he knows the differences between urban and rural districts, and it may be a bit of a trick to get this all done. But if a voucher system is implemented, how do you anticipate that it will impact public schools in the next 5 or 10 years? And again, Dr. Kent, how about you start with that?
Okay, sure. Well, I think we have to kind of take a step back and think about what schools are really about. Schools can do one of 2 things. They can recreate society as it already is with the haves and have-nots, or they can help create a society as it should be. And each one of us spent our career attempting to provide as much opportunity and support for all students in every corner of the districts that we serve. So when the question is framed from the perspective of educational policy, I think clear thinking folks really need to speak up and recognize that that's not really the nexus of where this is coming from. This is really, in the larger context, an attack on public education, an attack on democracy in some circles. And if you want to injure a democracy, one of the first essential steps is to undermine public schools. So when we look at the voucher program in Texas, anyone arguing that this is an educational reform effort I think is being disingenuous, because the math just doesn't shake out. We have 5.4 million students in public schools in Texas. There are 300,000 private school seats. So that's less than 0.5% of students who would benefit from that. And when we look at other states that have more wide-ranging voucher programs, Arizona, my former state, I was superintendent there for 13 years. New Hampshire is another example. Wisconsin's another example. In each one of those states that really have dove into vouchers, over 80% of the parents who are receiving these vouchers already have their children enrolled in these private schools. So this isn't an educational reform effort. This is a subsidy for middle and upper income parents who have already selected private schools. Now, that, from my perspective, is a political move more so than an educational one. So really, the voucher question is not about looking forward thinking. To me, it's a step backwards in one way back in time, really, when you talk about who will be attending these schools. Will result in the next 5 or 10 years, if it were to be adopted in such a way in Texas, and in resegregation, by social class, by race, ethnicity, and really making it difficult for low-income parents to benefit. One final thought is, here in Fort Worth, we look at our private schools. Many of them charge anywhere from $20,000 to $28,000 a year in tuition. If Texas were to adopt a $10,000 voucher, you're not giving a low-income parent $10,000. You're giving that parent a $15,000 bill. Not to mention the responsibility of providing their own transportation. And if the student wants to participate in after school extracurricular activities, there's a charge there too. So again, I question the motivation and the effectiveness of such an effort.
Dr. Stone, impact on public schools if a school choice, aka voucher program, is approved?
Yeah, same thing as Kent described. I mean, it really is not about bettering our public education systems at all. It's really political. And I think the majority of people realize that. And one thing that I would definitely want to emphasize is that at a time when we are advertising that we want to listen to parents, and, you know, you're not going to find a more active and vocal voice who is anti-vouchers than the largest parent organization in our state, the PTA. And they are rallying, they are organizing, and they're going to be very, very involved this legislative session to be heard, as they have in the past, to shut this down for all the reasons that Kent described. It's not what's best for all kids. And it truly is just a political issue that those of us who support public education will never be in favor of.
Dr. Hinojosa, let me get an argument ask a question from the other side. Why not allow more parents to have choice?
Well,
Choice in where they send their.
Well, because we have significant choice already. In Dallas ISD, only 30% of the kids go to their neighborhood school. They go to our magnet schools, our P-Tech schools, or all of our transformation and innovation schools. And so choice is a word that has been used, but it's disingenuous. They're not using the word voucher. When they poll this, they use the word choice. And a lot of people have charter schools as an option. So the choice is already there. And, you know, the legislatures in session, they should do no harm. That's a Hippocratic oath. But this is going to do significant harm to a lot of school districts. And let me also tell you, this is different. This is different from the past. In the past, we always had a backstop. We had rural Republicans that would be the backstop because they didn't want this happening. Well, from what I understand, a lot of the legislation that's being prepared is going to bracket just the urban centers. So they're only going after the urban centers, and the urban centers typically did not vote for this administration. And so it's very interesting. Just like when I was superintendent for 27 years and we would be discussing something that made absolutely no sense, I would have to tell my senior staff, There you go, trying to put logic into an illogical situation. This is not logic. This is about politics. This is about payback. And this is about, and the thing about it is, if you're going to give government money, shouldn't you be held accountable? Shouldn't you have to take the state exam like the rest of us? Shouldn't you not discriminate? If you're going to take state dollars, you're not allowed to discriminate. Let's see how this plays out if it does pass. And this time, there is a good chance it's going to pass. So people need to be awake.
Yeah, you mentioned bracketing out the rural areas. I wonder if that's enough to get those school districts to come on board. What do you guys think? Kent?
Well, I would let my colleagues speak to that from their understanding of Texas and a more historical perspective. But I wonder if that strategy just seems to be kind of disingenuous again. This is not about improving education in Texas. This is about providing opportunity for friends of those in power.
It does give it more legs by being bracketed, but
Right.
still, all politics are local. So it just depends on when that local representative from rural Texas has to face people at the grocery store and at church. Will they pull the trigger? That's the partisan trigger. We'll see what happens. It's going to be very interesting.
All right, well, let's move on to curriculum choice and that topic. Earlier this year, the state of Florida successfully campaigned to have the AP course on African American Studies changed to remove content described as queer theory and critical race theory. Would you please help our audience understand how those courses are developed and the role the state and regulatory agencies like the TEA and the individual school districts have on the development and implementation of curriculum in schools? And Dr. Stone, let's start with you on that one. Good to see you, by the way.
Good to see you. Yeah, it's really important for everyone to understand the role that the state plays in curriculum. It's important for everyone to understand that there's a State Board of Education, there's the Texas Education Agency, and then there are local boards. But let's start with the Texas Education Agency. They write standards. So that's sometimes difficult for people to understand. When we're talking about curriculum, in Texas, we're talking about curriculum standards, and they're called the Texas Education Knowledge and Skills, or the TEKS. They have to be adopted by the State Board of Education, and that's a big process in terms of just involvement. The State Board of Education will appoint educators, parents, business partners, a broad, vast group of stakeholders to work on this before the TEKS are ever approved. Then once those TEKS are adopted, and again, they're just standards. They say the what that needs to be learned by kids in all of the different content areas from pre-K all the way through 12th grade coursework. But once the TEKS are adopted, then local districts, they take them and they make decisions from there. Oftentimes they're making decisions about textbooks, for example, and the state also has control in that area. The state approves and adopts textbooks that districts can use. They can choose from the adopted textbooks. So back to your example about Florida, the state can control material that is in textbooks because they can work with textbook publishers to say the only way that they'll adopt their textbooks is if certain materials are potentially eliminated. And so that's how the state gets involved in that, often through textbook adoption process. But districts make those decisions and then take them to the board, and the board adopts what textbooks will be used, as well as other curriculum resources. But there's a lot of involvement that goes on here. Textbook adoption committees at the local level are also made up of teachers and parents, and they go through all of the options they can choose from to decide which of the textbooks that they're going to be using for their district. But we get into a lot of gray areas from curriculum resources that teachers may choose or districts may choose to use and how they will teach the TEKS. So the TEKS are like the what, the standards, but then there's the how it's going to be taught. And that is oftentimes left up to the local professional judgment of teachers who are making decisions about how they'll teach curriculum. And you know, that's sometimes where teachers can get themselves sometimes in trouble if they're not aligning their professional judgment with what is the accepted standards of the district. And so, you know, it really is a very detailed process, lots of involvement. But, you know, obviously it's all tied back to students learning the standards that the state sets out that would align them to be successful on their state assessments or in, you know, future life is always the goal. So that's kind of all the detailed, sounded kind of boring as I was saying it, but that really is the process. And I guess the big point is there's a lot of involvement, a lot of discretion at the local level as well.
So having outlined that process, what do you think about what happened in Florida and removing, you know, these courses as it relates to African American studies and other things that are happening across the country and even in Texas?
Yeah, I mean, I have some real strong opinions about the altering of history and us, you know, not eliminating or rewriting history just to align with any type of political agenda. And that's some of what we've seen happen in different states, or, you know, there's even at different local levels, there's lots of conversations about whether or not that we should be teaching different issues. A lot of them have to do with American history. I firmly believe that it's not our role. It's not the role of educators. It's not the role of legislators to try to rewrite history. We have to be able to expose kids to the history of our past so that they can learn from that. And there's a lot of history. Now, again, this would be Dr. Hinojosa's area as a former political science and history teacher, but I definitely, in terms of my core beliefs, know that we have to expose kids to the good, the bad, and the ugly so that they can learn from it. That's how we all learn from lessons of the past to not make mistakes in our future.
Dr. Hinojosa, the good, the bad, the ugly. You
Oh,
agree?
yeah, I'm going to weigh in for sure. You know, history, what is history? History is his story. It's not her story, it's his story. And then you're a journalist, and you know that the truth is there's always at least 3 versions of the truth. And which one do you believe? Same thing with lawyers. This is the Dallas Bar Association. When they take on a case, they got to hear multiple perspectives till they come up with enough evidence that they have a conclusion. And so I think that I'll just give a very graphic example. I was a Texas history teacher, and believe it or not, way back in the 1980s, I taught Mexican American studies in Dallas ISD. It was an approved curriculum that we could teach. And I taught the Alamo, but I taught it from multiple perspectives, what was in the traditional textbook, but also from primary sources that were from a different perspective. And it just makes people think about what is the real truth here. And, you know, the goal of the Alamo was to slaughter the Mexicans. And I was a little kid, and now I'm an immigrant, and that's what was going through my head. Well, that was some people's version of the goal of the Alamo. But when you see that actually Texas seceded from another country because of slavery had something to do with that, and they were part of Mexico, and is this an invasion, or is this, no, this is just Texas history. So I think it's a very complex matter that draws a lot of emotions. But, you know, if I was just watching a show the other day, I was on a panel with the Dallas Mavericks about a year ago, and it was sharp. It was amazing to me that from the perspective of the African-American coaches, the Black coaches on the Mavericks who live in Frisco, and they're going to go to the grocery store late at night. They put on their Mavericks gear so that they won't be profiled because they're going to to a store late at night. And so it's just trying to simplify things creates a lot of havoc. So I think it's always better for inquiring minds to look at multiple perspectives till you come down to history is qualitative research. You'll get some numbers, but qualitatives are the stories that are attached to those numbers. And to not allow students to be involved in things that their families for generations have lived through, I think that would be malpractice, in my opinion, to not allow multiple perspectives to be reviewed.
Dr. Hinojosa, before I go to Dr. Scribner on this, when you, as a teacher of history and political science, typically what was the reaction of your students when they heard some things about in history, Alamo, slavery, whatever, that was uncomfortable? What was typically the reaction from those students?
At first, they were tense because that's not what they've heard till they got to the classroom. Then they had like the epiphany. They had the aha moment. Oh my goodness. And then they started, you would see the almost virtual nodding of the head about stories that their grandparents told them or stories that their aunties told them. And I taught in the inner city the whole time, so these were students that had now this different worldview experience. And now they were getting to see something different that was taught to them all the way up. And it was really, I still hear from students that had my class. I run into them at the grocery store, going in at the golf course. And they always talk about how at least I made them think. They didn't always agree with me, but at least I made them think.
Doctor, should we be worried about some of the trends going on in this area?
Now,
Dr. Scribner,
I mean, isn't that the job of educators to make students think and help them solve problems and think critically? If we are being mandated to provide a partial account of history, then we are giving students an incomplete education. If that's what the legislature is mandating us to do. And that's an incomplete education for students of all race and ethnicity, of Anglo students, of Latino students, Asian students, African-American students, all students. So when we talk about outlawing African-American studies in Florida, again, these issues are not problematic inside of the school building. We've been navigating this for decades. We've been providing a future workforce for many years. When I hear this, kind of the leading actors in this debate are Florida and Texas, it feels a lot like not an educational issue, but a proxy presidential primary, and that's not what our kids need. 5.4 million students in Texas need high quality education so they can be prepared for success beyond high school and college and career and life.
Proxy presidential primary issues. So what do you do about that, doctor? I mean, how do you get I guess parents really to understand that inside the building it's a different world than what's going on outside with the politics?
Yeah, and to Dr. Hinojosa and Dr. Stone's point earlier, I mean, our job is we're educators. We're not politicians. Our job is to educate. There are others whose role it is to deliver the message to constituents, and I think voters will be well served to listen to this and listen to many other messages that really underlines the fact that all of this noise is just undermining the focus on reading, writing, and mathematics, and teaching and preparing students for success. And this is all by design. Back to the original voucher point. If we can undermine public education, then we can allocate potentially $3 billion. 300,000 private school seats at 10,000 a pop to our friends who are already sending their kids to private schools.
All right, thank you. Let's move on. Diversity, equity, and inclusion has been used as a catch-all by many people describing things like social emotional learning or anti-discrimination policies of affirmative action, critical race theory. And some people believe it helps people from different backgrounds understand each other better. And other people believe that it has strong potential to foster animosity based on immutable characteristics. I'm wondering, Dr. Hinojosa, what do you believe are the benefits and potential downsides of using race-specific policies and instruction for the administration of our public school system, and also the instruction given to students? What do you think, buddy?
I think what's ironic here is, I've been in a lot of chamber meetings where every organization in Dallas has a diversity, equity, and inclusion policy. Dallas ISD has a racial equity policy. We're just trying to make things equitable, not equal, equitable. Give those who need the most, the most. It reminds me of the principal who wanted to be principal but didn't want to do principal. Or it reminds me of the superintendent that wants to be superintendent but doesn't want to do superintendent. This reminds me of the people that want racial equity and believe it, but when they go act on it, then they run when people push back. Either you believe in this or you don't. And it's difficult, it's passionate. But to my friend, Dr. Scribner's point, a lot of this is a manufactured crisis. This is a very brilliant, well-organized strategy to create havoc in starting with school boards. By the way, the playbook is not stop at the school boards. They're starting at school boards because it's much easier to win elections in school boards. And it used to be only the urban areas used to get the havoc. But now suburban areas get the havoc. County districts get the havoc. And it's a distractor from the main point. Most people believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's just not popular to say so. And then the tag gets put on certain things like social emotional learning. The Wallace Foundation gave us $7 million to make sure that we could teach resilience, grit, achievement to kids that were suffering. And we have this strategy that was Dallas School Board. 3 Black, 3 white, 3 brown. They don't agree on much, but they unanimously voted to support social emotional learning. They unanimously supported racial equity policies that we had. But some people have hurt the cause by the fire and brimstone approach. I went to one event and there was 2 presenters. One was fire and brimstone. And the other one told me, African-American message, I'm not going to do that. He goes, this is more about substance and learning and how do we get the best resources to the people who need it the most. In a very, he was a trained MIT economist working at Harvard School, Kennedy School, and just delivered a very succinct way of how you could actually break down these achievement and opportunity gaps. He did not raise his voice. He was very measured. He just laid it all out. So I think we've hurt our cause by some people being overly aggressive, but you can't lose sight of this big picture. You go to any airport in America and look around. See if there's any diversity. You go to any restaurant. I promise you, the next restaurant you go to, I want you to look around and see if you're in a bubble. This is the real world. You go to any courthouse, you go anywhere, to any mall. I always do that. I've always kept an open eye about what diversity really is. And so I think it's just very difficult right now, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. Until we get past the next presidential election, it's going to be right in the face of everybody. But I've had to fire one consultant because he made everybody line up by the level of whiteness. I said, get out of here. You can't shame people into doing the right thing. So part of it is we've created this by allowing certain fire and brimstone people to take it over the top and not look at it from a substantive level. So that's, but in Dallas, we don't apologize for it. A lot of people don't realize that Dallas has 5% white students. That's less than El Paso ISD. That's less than LA Unified. That's less than New York City. So we have 95% ethnic minority students. So I think people just need to move forward, do what you can, because our students deserve it.
Dr. Scribner, what are your thoughts?
Well, equity as a policy issue is complicated because we're not talking about addressing equity issues. So equity is not about addressing, it's about redressing. It's about redressing past injustices, segregation, exclusion. And so if you believe that all groups have been treated the same through history, and that generations of not earning income has no impact on people's position in life and poverty levels, then I guess going against this, it makes sense. But I think most people recognize that the circumstances that Dr. Hinojosa described, poverty has a huge impact. And think about it. If we were in a high school or college debate class, and we were saying, I am against diversity, equity, and inclusion, then I must be for, what's the opposite of diversity? Sameness. So I'm for sameness, I'm for inequity, and I'm for exclusion. Does that sound like something that makes sense in our public schools? I don't think so.
Dr. Stone.
Yeah, I mean, and Dr. Hinojosa referenced this. You need only look at the data. The data for the achievement gaps has been there forever. And we've always disaggregated data by race, but it's when you start to really try to do something about what the causes are for the disparities that where you can get pushback. You're talking to 3 superintendents that were the 3 first superintendents, and I'm not sure we're maybe not the only superintendents in the state of Texas who had equity policies that were written. I followed the lead of Dr. Scribner and Dr. Hinojosa, and this was years ago. We were doing this work, and it was heralded as good work until politics changed, and all of a sudden, all of it was not good work anymore. Nothing changed in terms of what we were doing. We were finding things that in our systems that were broken, and we were dismantling them, and we were just doing the work to try to close the achievement gaps. One of the best examples for me was the work that we did in Richardson ISD, where we used data driven by data to see the disparities in terms of our kids of color who were disproportionately under identified for gifted and talented. I mean, we had schools that were where we had high population of our white affluent students, and they were over identified. Sometimes 14% of the campus would have been identified as gifted and talented. Across town, we have a school that was predominantly our students made up of our students of color, and they may have 3 or 4% of that school would be identified gifted and talented. Once you dispel any belief that white kids are just more gifted and talented, you have to start looking at what is broken in our system that we're doing, because we're the ones that are identifying them. And then you have to start addressing it. It's really that simple. It's not political. It's about equity. It's about making sure, what are we doing in while we have control over this system to make sure that we aren't, that we're providing opportunities for kids and that our system isn't broken. So we fixed that. And in 1 year, we were able to reverse that to where at this school that would have 3% 1 year, the next year it has 7%. Same kids, we just fixed the system. And that's all we're really trying to do, so that, all kids, all means all.
Thank you. Yeah, Dr. Hinojosa, DEI, CRT, affirmative action, some have become bad words or bad terms in the political discourse. and as you pointed out, that's sometimes impacts the process.
No doubt about it. And people use words to vilify and things, and some people get scared and they start backing off. Others figure out how to make it work, and others stick to their guns. And you know what? And I'm proud to be an immigrant. I'm proud to grow up in Oak Cliff. But I'm also not a militant, because militants don't get to the table. They don't get to stay at the table. But you gotta do you, but it's not about you. So when you're there at the table making these decisions, you got to make the best decision that will give access to as many of your students as you can, despite the political fallout.
Thank you. Dr. Scribner, some lawmakers have called for pay raises for teachers. And over the years, you've seen pay raises, teacher pay raises, the ISD, Fort Worth ISD, our ISD. How are these raises implemented first? And what do you think is the best way to deal with teacher retention issues, and the best way to recruit talent into your school districts?
Well, a couple things, and I know that Dr. Hinojosa will talk a lot about their very strategic teacher compensation plan, which many of us have replicated. It's exceptional in investing in teachers. Teaching is a noble profession. It is a profession. These are professionals, and we should treat our teachers as such. Texas is #1 in the country in business climate, but number 42 in the country when it comes to child welfare. So what we need to do is invest in our schools, recognize that the teachers are producing our future workforce, our future adults. I joked a lot in my career that the one thing I can guarantee you after 34 years in urban public education is that children grow up to be adults. So the question is, what kind of Fort Worth do you want to live in the next decades? And we must invest in our students. So from my perspective, investing in teachers is absolutely the right thing to do. We need to support them. But when we look at the teacher shortage and folks who are stepping out, again, back to the original conversation. Yes, this is a manufactured crisis, but it's pretty well manufactured. When we are accusing our librarians of being pornographers, when the Roberto Clemente book is banned in Roberto Clemente Middle School, accusing our teachers of grooming or indoctrination. We're trying to teach our students how to read, write, and do mathematics and be prepared for life after high school. The social and emotional learning, that somehow is under fire when our teachers know that students through and after the pandemic are coming to our schools with great social and emotional need. So if we cannot address their social and emotional need, then any academic transfer of information is going to be made that much more difficult. So if the goal is to undermine schools by pushing out all these red meat political flags, then it's working. And again, this is not some sort of organic local concern. This is a very well organized think tanks, Turning Point USA and others who are providing the talking points, providing the signs at the board meetings with the same lettering and the same coloring. I mean, this is a national brand of undermine public education and allow the financial elites to get their money on a big dollar amount with regard to vouchers in Texas and other states.
Gromer, I'd like to weigh in on that teacher issue. Teachers will go for the money, but they won't stay. If you don't treat them well, they'll leave. They'll stick around long enough to get another job. Our teacher pay system was very controversial. The 4 years I was gone, we lost 60% of our workforce. But now, after we implemented it, and we changed a lot of it, we were micromanaging teachers. Nobody likes to be micromanaged. And we were micromanaging even our good teachers, so we had to make adjustments. But the day that I dropped the mic was when I saw the data. We kept 95% of our highest performing teachers, and we lost of the 80% of the teachers that we lost were our lowest performing teachers. So we knew who were the best ones, and we paid them the most money to go to the toughest schools. When we started this in Dallas, our average salary was 53. When I left, it was 63. But we had 47 teachers making over 100,000, and we had significant number of teachers. The 2/3 of our teachers made $75,000 or more. And so therefore our turnover rate went from 20-something% down to 15%, the lowest in Dallas County. Who would have ever thunk that in Dallas ISD, a tough urban system? So to me, the data is what convinced me. I was skeptical when I inherited Mr. Miles' system, and most of it worked perfectly. A few things we had to tweak, we had to make better, but it still doesn't matter. If you mistreat teachers, they're not going to stay. I know Jeannie's done a lot of work on this. Dr. Stone, I'm sure you want to elaborate on this.
Yeah, I will say it's a real issue. And the Charles Butt Foundation, they did a massive survey in 2022 of thousands of teachers across the state, and 77% of the teachers admitted that they had considered quitting their job in the last year. So, we really have to rebound from that kind of data. Other data, public schools in Texas, teachers in public schools in Texas are paid on average $7,500 less than the rest of the United States. So, it's not just about pay, but it is also about pay. And we Fort Worth ISD, Richardson ISD, again, following the lead of Dallas ISD, had a really amazing idea with this, what they called TEI. Now it's called TIA, which is the Teacher Incentive Allotment. This is a statewide initiative. And this is something that the listeners and viewers need to understand, that this is a movement across the state of Texas that more and more hundreds and hundreds of districts are now following, to increase their teacher pay as they should. And it's based on them getting great results for kids and rewarding teachers for the professional job that they're doing to deliver on results for students. And at one time that was very controversial. It was called pay for performance, and educators were against it. Now we're moving in the direction of teachers being able to see that they need to be rewarded for bringing great results for kids, and the state is now funding that. And so that's, I think that we're only, probably within 5 years that every state will move, every district in our state will move to that. It all started in Dallas ISD, as so many things do, but it also is the right thing to do so that teachers can earn, a living wage, and they can make what they should be making, which in some cases I believe should be 6-figure salaries.
Absolutely.
Dr. Stone, money is important. Are there other issues that need to be addressed in terms of the teacher shortage and retaining teachers? About the environment, what is it like in this era being a teacher? Is it?
Yeah, it's more challenging than ever, and Dr. Scribner referenced some of this just in terms of just the whole way that profession has been treated in the last year. If you go back to whenever COVID first happened, teachers were really heralded as being the frontline workers, and it was the year of appreciating teachers. Well, that quickly devolved into something that now became really almost untenable for teachers to take on the wrath of the scrutiny that has been thrust upon them in the last year. And so there's that. There's also just, it's a really, really demanding job. Just when you're thinking about just the social, emotional aspects of meeting kids' needs where they are. And so we need to be, doing everything we can to support teachers. I cannot say that enough. If you ask teachers what they would want more than anything else, they're always going to their answer is always going to be more time. How can they be given more time to plan together, to prepare, and those kinds of things? So I know a lot of districts are looking for some innovative solutions for that, to that. One of them that's being talked about right now is moving to 4-day school weeks. I'm adamantly opposed to that, just because I don't think that that's what's best for kids. And there's a lot of research that supports that. There's a lot of, tons of research, and everyone will agree that might be a great incentive for teachers to hire them and retain them. But once everyone moves to that, their districts will lose their competitive edge, and kids will have been harmed in the process. And so I could talk a lot about that, but I just want you to everyone to be thinking about that. That's not what's best for learning, especially at a time when we need to be conserving every instructional minute we can. Dr.
All right,
Hinojosa.
Dr.
Yeah, I
Hinojosa.
want to weigh in on that subject. First of all, I agree with Dr. Stone. The 4-day week is not a panacea. In fact, we saw when kids weren't in buildings, what happened to a lot of them. But let's go back to the other question you asked, Gromer, and we ran into that. HEB did the survey, and they surveyed all of our principals. Our principals were still with us. They surveyed our assistant principals. Most of our assistant principals were still with us. They surveyed our teachers, and our teachers said they're tired. We made them teach out of a box for a year, and half the kids in the box, half the kids in person, made everybody wear masks. They had to be the mask police. It was just overwhelming to them. And then now they get beat up like Dr. Scribner described. And so what we did in Dallas on my way out, we knew who the 1,000 best teachers were. And so our senior team, we went and met with all 1,000 of them. What's it going to take for you to come back next year? And we were very fortunate that we kept 95% of those teachers. But it was a stark reality of now, and everybody's there's a teacher in everybody's family, or you go to church with a teacher, you know a teacher, and every one of them will tell you that same story. And that's why at least the legislature is aware of that. Now they're trying to do something, but what is the solution? They can't be beating them up on one arm and then giving them a salary increase on the other and saying, oh, we're good now. So that just doesn't make sense.
All right, thank you. Before I ask you guys about advice that you would give other superintendents, let's talk about communication from community, parents, those, I don't know how much time you give them, 3-5 minutes at the mic, because we've seen that during the pandemic, and there's no shortage of videos of people showing up at school board meetings. There are challenges there. Sometimes you get shouting matches, things like that. Would you please let our audience know the best way that you can get involved in local schools and local school district matters? Share your concerns, your ideas. Dr. Stone, can you help us with that?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, we all want parent engagement. We can't get enough parent engagement. We want our parents to be talking to us, working with us. The key word there is with us, not against us, not against our teachers. Just to understand that it is at the core, every educator, we go into the business, this profession, because we have a genuine desire to help all kids. We love kids. We want to help all kids. So, but that's not always, people don't always trust that's true, and that in any way we would ever try to harm kids is just ludicrous. And so, first come to us with good intent, that you want to help and be a partner in making things better for the school district and for all kids. That's all we ask for. And then we will lock arms with you. We will listen to you. We will give you a seat at the table. We will try to find a committee for you to be on. We will welcome you to come to school board meetings and to speak to our boards, to give advice of ways that we can improve and work together. But the key word again is with us, because if you work with us, we will work with you. I've never seen an exception to that.
Dr. Stone, and I want Dr. Scribner and Hinojosa to weigh on this as well. Parental rights has become a big political issue. Should it be?
So, you know, there's a little bit of a difference there in that the rights that you believe for your one child or two children may not be what's right for the masses. And the decisions that we make in our professional judgment through the experience that we have as tenured superintendents, we have an innate sense of judgment that we have to execute and draw upon to make decisions of what we believe is what is best for all students. And so it's not one parent can't impose or have an expectation that what they believe is right for their one child is therefore then right for, in whatever the case is, for the tens of thousands of kids that we have to make decisions for. And that's where you get into problems whenever one tries to replace their thoughts about what's right for their kid in terms of what's right for all.
Let me answer
Dr. Scribner?
that. Let me answer that to both questions in one response, real quick. I cannot help 146,000 parents. Board members divide that by 9. They can't help that many volume. We have 2 systems in Dallas to take care of the parents where they should be taken care of. One is called our customer service model, which is the core 4. That means we believe that we need to be focused on student achievement, flexible in the responses to our customers, which our parents are our customers, friendly in our approach, and it's just fast in our delivery of products and services. And so we have this other tool called Let's Talk, that if you want to talk to your principal, you submit a request and someone will respond to you in 24 hours. Mm-hmm. And we document it. And if they don't, a supervisor talks to that person. You're not responding to the parents. And so we have those systems in place. It's just not part of the rhetoric that you hear and the noise. So I'll leave it at that. And that addresses both questions in one. Ken, Dr. Scribner?
Dr. Scribner, do we need a parent's Bill of Rights as some folks in the legislature?
Well, I think that first of all, to the parental engagement piece, that K-12 Insight company that does Let's Talk is fantastic. That really is a great way to have internal accountability for our staff following up. So that is something I would really underline. And as far as the Bill of Rights, I mean, I absolutely accept to the fact that my rights end where your rights begin, and your rights end where my rights begin. So my wife and I have every right to decide if our high school son reads this book or not, or not. But we do not have the right to prohibit or require another family's child. That is the job of the school board and their policies. But I think some of this, again, this is political theater. This is when you talk about who are the parents who are coming and banging on the podium. Many of them are not parents, which is okay because the schools are the community schools. Many of them don't live in our communities. Some of them have other political motivations, as we said earlier. But I think some of the responsibility lies on us as superintendents and our colleagues, our brothers and sisters who are in that role as well. The traditional framework, the traditional method doesn't work anymore. When I've been a superintendent for 20 years, I was told to engage with community, talk to elected leaders, talk to the chambers, join the Rotary Club, talk to the neighborhood associations. You do all of that, and you've contacted less than 1% of your population. There are other natural allies in the community. I'm part of an initiative called Have Faith in Education, where we are helping school leaders lead from a position of strength and connect with faith leaders in support of public education. Not corporate charters who are about buying real estate and flipping schools, not vouchers, which is about letting Wall Street and hedge fund folks get their hands on $3 billion in Texas. What we're talking about is true, authentic. These are natural allies who remove faith from the conversation. These are community organizations that meet every week, that are alive, that are vibrant, and those organizational members hold that organizational leader, pastor, minister, rabbi, imam, in very high esteem. So if superintendents can develop these faith advisory councils, these organizational advisory councils, then really we're talking to a larger population. 75% of people in DFW report that they attend faith organization church once or twice a month. So again, I think there are other non-traditional avenues where we can connect with community, and community can connect with us in support of public education, because without public education, as go the schools, so goes the community. And we will find that out if we begin to siphon off $3 billion and provide it as a subsidy for upper income private school parents.
All right, thank you. In the time that we have left, each of you have had long tenures as superintendents, and Michael Hinojosa, you were either couldn't get enough or were a glutton for punishment. You did 2 tours at DISD, but I want you to assess where we are now and what advice would you give superintendents going forward on how to improve districts. And of course, the main goal is to educate our children. It's the best path forward. Dr. Stone, you want to start?
Sure. Yeah, a few things. Stay true to your core beliefs of doing what's right by kids. Do no harm, as has been referenced here. Use data to guide you, and always keep focused on moving outcomes for kids, all kids. Have a thick skin. You're going to need it. You can't go into this if you don't have a thick skin and can stand by your core beliefs to protect you and to help you to sleep at night.
Dr. Scribner, and then we'll take.
Yeah, the superintendency is a dangerous profession, right? I mean, we are, superintendents are interviewing for their job every day. When they give a speech at a luncheon, when they're meeting with a parent group, when they're meeting with the principals, when they're meeting with board members. So we all know what we signed up for. And it's a full contact sport, let me tell you. I was taught a long time ago by a mentor, and something that I share with new and younger leaders, that there are 3 spheres that they didn't teach us about in education administration class. And they are morals and ethics. Always do the right thing, morals and ethics. The second sphere is health. We have to take care of our own physical and emotional health. This is a tough job where you're not allowed to be weak. You're not allowed to, what do they say when you're swimming with sharks? Rule number 1 is don't bleed. So the first sphere is morals and ethics. The second sphere is your physical and emotional health. And the third sphere is your own personal financial stability. Live within your means, so that you do not need this job. So when someone tries to influence you to do something that is unethical, sphere 1, you can say absolutely not. I think each one of us have had long tenures. I've been a superintendent in 3 different districts over the 20 years because grounded in those 3 spheres.
Dr. Hinojosa. Yeah, I learned this from another I didn't learn this till my 3rd superintendency, and it's the triangle of success. There's this triangle right here, and inside the triangle are the students. At the top of the triangle is the school board, and they're your bosses. You're not their boss. So, and they're different from you. They're not trained like you are, but they're your bosses. Over here at this corner is the staff. You can't do this by yourself. So you got to depend on your staff. Your staff is diverse. Your principals, your custodians, your direct reports. And then over on this corner is the community. And the community is different. You got your mayor, you've got your all of your taxpayers that don't have kids in the schools, and they're all diverse. So if you can move everybody in the same direction, you can thrive and your kids can do well. If you only got 2 parts of the triangle, if your board and your staff love you, but your community doesn't, they're going to change your board. So if you got only 2 parts of the triangle, all you can do is survive from paycheck to paycheck. And if you only got 1 part of the triangle, get another job, fool. It's over. You just don't know it yet. So you got to work hard to work in all 3 parts of that triangle, including some of the people that disagree with you, because we deal with people's 2 most prized possessions, their money and their kids, and they're gonna have an opinion, and you gotta figure it out. And I was so glad that a mentor taught me that triangle of success, and that's the triangle of success I try to teach to the people that I work with now as the superintendent in residence for the Council of the Great City Schools.
Taught it to me. He's taught it to a lot of people.
Yes.
That's fantastic, Dr. Stone. Dr. Stone, Dr. Scribner, Dr. Hinojosa, thank you for being here. It's a terrific conversation. Thanks to the Dallas Bar Association. They always put on the best shows in town. And thank you all for listening and tuning in. Look, these issues we talked about today aren't going away. My suggestion is to try to get involved in a constructive way. And always, there are elections coming up in May and beyond. Vote and let the politicians, let the elected officials know what you're thinking. That about wraps it up. Again, thanks to everyone. Have a good day and hope to see you all again soon.
Thank you.